Hi, welcome back. I'm Katie Kempner with another episode of Perspectives Live here during Advertising Week Europe. And now I'm joined by Carrie Hindmarsh, CEO of M&C Saatchi. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for inviting me.
So can you tell us very quickly what you do?
Sure. I run M&C Saatchi Advertising in the UK. I actually started as a grad trainee at Saatchi & Saatchi in the early 90s, and then made the switch across to M&C Saatchi Advertising when it first began in 95, and I've stayed there ever since, so quite unusual to be quite loyal to a business. So 22 years with Saatchi's, which is something to be proud of.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's where I find myself today.
So during that time, did you get married, have some kids?
Well, I had, actually I came into the kid thing quite late for one reason or another, and so I am now the lucky mother of 3-year-old identical twin boys.
Wow.
Yeah.
And yet you look so well rested.
Yeah, I actually had one of my first full nights of sleep last night, which is quite unusual, so that was nice.
Well, you look you're glowing. So, you and I have been talking just the teeniest bit about, what is that like? I mean, to have such a high pressure and important job and also be the mom of twins.
Yeah, it's actually really hard work, if I'm honest, because you're constantly trying to be good at work and to be good at being a mother. And I find it quite disappointing that people, a lot of women actually, pretend, or maybe they're really good at managing it, but I think it's a really difficult thing to be a good mother and good at your work. And I'd quite like us to all be a bit more honest about that. And it's one of those things, if you kind of scratch away at the surface and talk to people properly, most people will be honest and say, no, of course it's tough. But if you're a bit of a perfectionist, and I'm not saying I'm quite there, but I think if you like doing things well, trying to do those two things and manage them is always going to be really tough. So you find yourself getting to the end of the day thinking there's so much more I could do, but I want to go home and do story time. And yeah, it's tough. The whole work-life balance thing is...
I think you're 100% right, and that's why I even wanted to do Perspectives in the beginning, because for me, I mean, I found I have 2 kids, got divorced, I ended up getting remarried, which was great. But, through all of that, I always felt that I was rushing. I was either like rushing to work or rushing home or rushing somewhere or forgetting something. Always sort of feeling frazzled, and I was like, and I certainly have not figured it out really. No. But at some point, you have to say, wait a second.
Yes.
I can't be like this all the time.
You know the hamster wheel?
Yeah.
It's a bit like that, isn't it? You're like running around this hamster wheel, and like, at some point, do I have to jump off? What was it, But I think the thing is that you have to accept that you be as good as you can be when you're doing the thing that you're doing, and that is enough, and then you'll move on to the next thing, and just do your best.
Yeah, that's excellent advice.
Someone once said to me, which I thought was really good advice, which is focus on what you're really good at and do a lot of that, and that will make you happy and confident. Don't try and be good at everything, and I think that's really good advice.
And so how does that translate into, what your typical day would look like then? So does that mean you're spending less time at the office, or?
No, I have a very regimented time that I can be in the office, because I do try to get home to read the boys' stories and stuff. But when I'm in the office, the time is very precious, so I kind of move from one thing to the next and create some time for myself to just think about stuff. Otherwise, you just do meeting after meeting after meeting. And use the time carefully, make sure I leave the office, when I need to leave the office. I mean, actually, it's bizarre. When you're, before I had kids, I probably drifted into the evenings at work and would find myself leaving at 8:30. At least now I have to leave earlier. So in some ways I have more lifetime, but yeah, it's pretty hectic.
So in your role, running the company, it's one thing to be able to be like, okay, listen, I need to leave, I need to go home to my kids.
Yeah.
How is it for people that work in your company? Do you think that they also feel that they have the opportunity to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. You have to lead by example. It's interesting though, because 10 years ago in our business, I don't think any of us were parents.
Yeah.
And now we've grown up and a lot of us are parents, and that makes it easier for people to come to our agency and be a parent. So yeah, I think that we have a lot of mums who do 4-day weeks, who have to leave at 5:30, and they just work in a very focused way during their days, and it, you know, we make sure that it can work for them.
There was a lot of, I don't know if you followed this at all, I hadn't asked you about this, but there was a lot of backlash at Yahoo. You know, Marissa Meyer sent out that thing that said no one can work from home. And there was tons of chatter about that. And a lot of people, and I guess at Yahoo they said, well, this doesn't really have to do with working mothers, it has to do with everybody. And, you know, other men came forward and said, well, I am a working father, or I take care of elderly people, you know, like elderly parents. But what sort of is your feeling on that, and how it, because it sounds like maybe it's okay at your company.
I think I mean, don't get me wrong, it's not easy. The industry has had to, it's not easy for the industry to work with that kind of flexibility, but we're getting there. And, you know, it might affect the kind of clients that you can work on. And so we think about that when we put people on certain bits of business. But it's interesting what you just mentioned about men in the workplace, because I think what now needs to happen is that employers need to recognise when men are sharing childcare duties and they need to leave the office earlier. At the moment, it still feels like it's a bit of a taboo, and I think we've got to move on from that. You know, if we want equality, we have to make sure that men have the same kind of respect from us when they need to do those things as we've expected that they should have for us when we need to leave the office at a certain time.
Yeah, that's true too. So maybe I should expand this and start just talking to everybody.
Yeah,
you know?
Exactly. Yeah, then you're taking on quite a lot.
Exactly. Have to stay focused. That's exactly what we were talking about. You can't do everything.
No, exactly right. Exactly right.
So I've asked this to everybody, and I would just love to get your opinion. If there's one piece of advice that you could give to somebody starting out, a woman we're going to stick with women, a woman starting out, that reflects on your career and something she should be doing, what would it be?
Well, the thing I've observed about the women that I've worked with is that for some reason we have a bit of a tendency to beat ourselves up about stuff, and we're not as confident as our male counterparts. And so I would, and it's not easy to just say to someone, be more confident, but I would ask people to, I would suggest to people that they focus on, like what I said before, what they're good at. Because I think that's what holds us back, our lack of confidence. And, you know, there are various, certainly within our industry, there are means and forums for women to get together and share ideas and swap stories and what have you. But learn from each other, be honest, as I said, that's so important, just be honest about what the issues are. And be open to new ideas.
That's great advice. So I wanted to just say it was a pleasure to meet you, and thank you so much for stopping by to talk with me.
Pleasure. Thank you very much.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
And stay tuned. We'll have a lot more. Thanks.